All right, welcome. In this explainer, we're diving into something pretty unusual. It's not a book or a film, but a dialogue, a direct confrontation, really, that lays out what it calls a strategic playbook for an unseen war. And the main battlefield? Well, it's the hearts and minds of young people. Disrupt, corrupt, then puppet. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This is the core mission we're going to unpack today. According to the source material, this is the agenda of a force they call the Tempters, and their primary targets are the youth. It's a chillingly simple, three-step blueprint for total control.
Okay, so let's get right into this playbook. The whole thing is built around this intense back and forth between a young guy named Evan and one of these Tempters. Evan just straight up confronts this being about its goals, and the answers she gets are, well, they're incredibly revealing. And right away, you can see the huge clash in how they see the world. Evan's coming from a place of fairness, you know? He's saying society needs rules to function. But the Tempter? It just sees vulnerability as an opportunity. It basically says, hey, do whatever you want. Your brain isn't even developed enough for rules and logic anyway. So Evan, being a pretty practical guy, asks the question we're all thinking. Okay, but what happens if I get caught? And this is where the Tempter drops some seriously cynical truth bombs about how our own society works, or doesn't work. So here's the Tempter's whole argument, and it's pretty wild. It says the system is basically collapsing on itself. There are more people breaking the rules than enforcing them, so your odds of getting caught are already low. But this next part is the real kicker. The idea that adults have been decommissioned. They've been trained to look the other way, terrified of getting sued or fired or worse for stepping in. This creates a total power vacuum where lawlessness can just take over. But Evan spots a major flaw in this plan. If you just push for chaos everywhere, won't you eventually destroy the very place you're operating in? It seems totally self-defeating, right? Well, the Tempter's answer to that question gets to the very core of what they're all about. And there it is. The Tempter just comes right out and says it. They've been cut off from whatever their original power source was. And now they have to feed on the energy that comes from human chaos. So violence, anger, destruction, that's not just a side effect of their plan. It is the plan. It's literally their food. The analogy it gives is perfect. A horde of locusts. They descend on one field, strip it bare, and then just swarm to the next one. But Evan sees the obvious problem. This strategy has an expiration date. Once all the fields are gone, the locusts starve. And the Tempter admits that this end, their own extinction, is something they're absolutely terrified of. So this deep-seated fear is what drives their whole operation. And it all comes back to those 3 steps we started with. But now we get the details. First, you distract them with endless entertainment and illusions until they can't even tell what's real anymore. Second, you weaken them morally, physically, emotionally, so they have no will to fight back. And third, you indoctrinate them, tricking them into thinking your destructive agenda is actually their own idea. And to show exactly how this works in the real world, the Tempter gives a perfect case study, the recruitment of a teenager named Diesel. This is the playbook in action, step by step. Step 1, distraction. Notice how clever this is. The Tempter doesn't say, go be evil. It says, use your creativity, escape reality. It frames video games and fantasy not as a waste of time, but as a noble escape, getting Diesel to willingly unplug from the real world. Step 2, weaken. So, when the pain of the real world eventually breaks through that fantasy bubble, what's the solution? Numb it. And the logic they use for drug abuse is just so twisted. They say you're not actually hurting yourself now. You're just punishing your future adult self, who they frame as some kind of enemy that deserves it. And finally, step 3, indoctrinate. This is all about the power of language. Stealing is a crime, right? But adjusting ownership? Well, that sounds like you're fighting for social justice. By just rebranding the action, the Tempter convinces Diesel that breaking the law is actually a righteous cause. So once you've corrupted an individual like Diesel, you don't stop there. The plan scales up. The next phase is to engineer widespread chaos. And one of the most powerful tools for that, according to the Tempter, is the media. See, the Tempter sells Diesel this idea that you have to burn the whole system down to build something better. So things like vandalism or blocking roads get reframed as protests. And the real goal isn't even the act itself. It's to get the media to show up because they're always hungry for a spectacle. And this timeline is just incredible. It shows how the whole cycle can turn societal decay into a kind of spectator sport. It starts with something absurd, then it gets sponsored, Then it escalates to real destruction that's covered with charts like it's a weather forecast. And by the time they're interviewing victims, the focus is just on finding someone to blame. When the truth finally comes out that an unseen voice was behind it all, the system just short circuits. Who are you going to arrest? So what happens when Diesel finally gets caught in all this? The Tempter's reaction is absolutely ice cold. It doesn't care at all. Diesel was disposable. In fact, it boasts, "I have 5 more like Diesel ready to do my bidding." He's completely replaceable. And that's when you realize this isn't just about random delinquency. It's a full-blown, coordinated attack in an invisible spiritual war. The camera pulls back here, and we start to see the entire battlefield. And in this war, the good guys, as they're called, are playing at a serious disadvantage. The problem, as it's laid out here, is all about focus. Good people are constantly in reaction mode. They're busy putting out one small fire here, dealing with another crisis over there. And they celebrate these little victories, but they completely miss the handful of arsonists behind them starting 10 new fires. It's a war of attrition, where everyone's treating the symptoms while the actual disease just keeps spreading and eroding everything. And this brings us right back to Evan. After hearing this whole dark playbook, his questions completely change. He stops asking why this is happening and starts asking what we can do about it. His first question is a defensive one. How do we start protecting our kids from these voices? But then he pivots. His next question shifts the whole conversation from defense to offense. It's not just about building shields anymore. It's about forging swords. Who, he asks, is actually working to develop the spiritual strength needed to fight these forces head-on? And this is the final thought it leaves us with. It's a question that goes beyond individual power and asks about collective action. Who is willing to team up, to not just stop the bleeding, but to actually reverse the tide of darkness? It's a powerful question that makes you wonder, in this whole unseen war, are we just bystanders, or are we meant to be part of the fight?